Hello, Dadirai. I am so delighted that we can do this interview with you for the January 2023 edition of the Thinking Working Politically Community of Practice newsletter. Let me start by introducing you briefly for the benefit of our audience. Dadirai Chikwengo is the lead governance advisor for CAFOD, or the Catholic Agency for Overseas Development, working in support of CAFOD's global governance work across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and she's based in the London office. Dadirai is an accomplished and influential civic leader and human rights defender in Zimbabwe, and she has over 20 years of experience working to strengthen civil society with both national and international organizations. Dadirai is also King's College African Women in Peacebuilding Fellow and is on the board of the John and Elnora Ferguson Center for African Studies at the University of Bradford. So, welcome again, Dadirai. This is such a pleasure to have this opportunity. And we want to have a conversation with you so that we can learn a little bit more about your journey in all things thinking and working politically. So, as we were preparing to speak this morning, you shared with me that over the past 7 years, you have been at the forefront of advocating for robust context analysis, particularly political economy analysis, to anchor programming decisions, and that as part of this work, you have developed internal guidance and provided ongoing accompaniment to staff through analysis. Can you tell us a little bit about where all this started? What is your TWP journey, if you will? How was it that you came to think about the centrality of politics to development, and what has been helpful in enabling you to do
Thank
that?
you. Thank you very much, Alina, for having me this morning on the TWP. Um, all things TWP, actually. Yes, it is a journey. I'm glad you used that word. It is a journey. I don't think I've really arrived yet, but the journey has started, which is the good thing. Um, so I could say I'm a governance specialist, and by saying that, I want to just zero in on the fact that I was trained mostly on that technical side. How do you program for elections? How do you program for human rights? How do you program for service delivery? And I think that was kind of like the training then. But clearly, as you see, slowly, the technical is being overtaken by the political. So this is actually where it all starts. That development itself has become political, as it were, and increasingly, everyone else working in development or funding partners are starting to actually see it that way. That you just need to understand politics, the power, the incentives, and how decision making is made. And so this is what was really this is what really drove me to be able to kind of like engage more on this subject. You can relate, Alina, that as when you sit in our offices and write all these log frames, half the time you see on our assumptions list on the log frames, we all say there will be political will to do this. And
Yes.
yeah, and it's a good statement to hide behind, isn't it? It's like, I don't want to worry about this. I don't want to know more about this, but yeah, I'll just write that. There will be political will to do this. And no one actually sits and says, where is that political will? What that political will actually mean? So I think this is my journey to say, I just wanted to kind of like look at how can I then kind of expound on that political will. And it didn't just happen by chance. So I had a boss who invited me to a cross agency group, which was like a very informal group, but working on political economy analysis. Everyone was trying to understand it. And
Was
this
was
was
it in CAFOD
this
or
was
was
like a
it in a
cross
different
agency group.
organization?
So it was Oxfam, it was CAFOD, it was
Oh,
other people, Christian Aid, Plan International, Care International. It was just a group of people that had come together because of that recognition. I said that everyone else has come to that recognition that development is political. And so you need to understand where power lies and when what happens. And so I was taken to that
Mm.
to that meeting by my boss. And I thought, this is very exciting. And I really want to, yeah, to go deeper into this because everyone else was really, it was now showing. I mean, if you're five agencies all in a room and all talking about the need to understand the politics, I mean, there's no motivation more than that. So I thought, oh wow, this is the opportunity for me then to be able to engage on this. Yeah, and as I was kind of like getting all this knowledge from other people at that time, simultaneously, I was looking at developing a CAFOD approach to governance. Like we've been doing governance for a long time, but I was just trying to go through and do some kind of stock take of what is it that we were doing around governance across
Yes.
Asia, across Africa, across Latin America, and what kind of approach could were we using. So I was developing this, and so this was quite timely because then when I was developing this approach, then I thought, oh, good, this is the opportunity. When I develop this approach and show what we are doing, I should be able to see whether then I could have a space for making sure that we build in political economy analysis at that point. Um, and it's not that we were not doing an analysis. We really were doing a lot of analysis, and the common tool that we were using across was called PESLA. I call it a cousin of the PEA, but PESLA is an acronym. So PESLA is an acronym.
For
So
what?
P
What?
stands for political, right? E stands for economic, S for sociological, T for technological, L for legal, and E for environmental. So thus we call it PESLA. But it is just a tool that you
Mm.
use, and you normally use it together with the SWOT analysis. So you're analyzing all those sections, which is that's why I call it a cousin of political economy analysis because it kind of like does a bit of what we would do, but the limitation of it is then that it doesn't give you much room to analyze. People will just then continue just telling you what is happening in those various areas, politically, environmentally, but
Mm.
then the analysis is not as deep as when you then use the concepts and approaches that you see in political economy analysis. Yes. So I needed something that would be useful to unpack that log frame political will that I talked about. Something that would be very useful for my managers at
Yes.
yeah, on a Monday morning, that they could be able to use this and be able to improve their programming and focus the programming to where change is likely to happen. So yeah, so then I set out to to develop I set out to develop a guidance on this. Yeah, we're going around and
Mm.
trying to look for information, yeah, around what other people were working on, also, yeah, some scholars and other people around, and that's where, yeah, you find that while you're doing that, you kind of like get into the thick of things and find so much information. You won't realize how much information is out there on thinking and working politically. So it kind of like overwhelms you, but also it gives you that pick and choose,
Yeah.
like, yeah, like I'll chase this one, I'll take that one, and then, yeah, bring that together. Yeah. So,
So can I ask you, as you were developing this guidance, how did you share and socialize it with other colleagues. And in particular, I think you and I have talked
Yes.
about this in previous interchanges we have had. How do you feel some of the concepts that are sort of very much embedded in the kind of language that we use around political economy analysis? How did that land with colleagues, and how did you try to make
That's a
it
very,
as
yeah,
accessible as possible?
that's a very good question. So yeah, so when I was now in this big bubble of mine of, yeah, found this, and I'm really going to create a guidance for staff, and so we can all follow this. I remember speaking. I remember speaking to one of my colleagues in one of the countries, and I said to them, "This is exactly what I said. I am going to develop a guidance on political economy analysis." And they went like, "What? Are you trying to make CAFOD academic or what?" He says, I can't even say that. That's too tongue twisting. So at that moment, the penny dropped that, oh, okay, I might have my own enthusiasm to do this, but then I need to temper it a little. And so
Mm,
I think that was kind of a starting point for me to realize that if this was the voice representing the 35 countries that I work in, yeah, I needed to do something about this. And so eventually I changed that and started saying, I am going to develop a guidance on how to do context analysis. So I felt the language was going to alienate
mhm.
people, to threaten people, to make people move away. So that was the starting point to say, how do I regulate that language so that that language can speak to the people that need to use it.
Yeah. And I think also in previous conversations, you talked about an example of how you very concretely landed this to make it accessible to people to understand exactly what this means in
Yes,
flesh, really. So
yeah.
can you tell
So
us a little
yeah,
bit
so
about that?
this whole idea of developing, of developing yeah, a guidance, then I had to test it somewhere because I just couldn't just have a guidance and say, oh wow, this is this. I really had to take it somewhere else. And I think what I want to raise here is the fact that sometimes with political economy analysis or thinking and working politically, you just need those opportunities, so that then you can embed it into existing processes that are happening, and at that point, as soon as I developed the guidance, we were one of our countries, which is Sierra Leone and Liberia. So this is kind of like the way we work. We get those two together, Sierra Leone and Liberia, not because they are the same, but we kind of like uh, we, yeah, we do have, we kind of call them one country office, just to minimize some of the costs and things like that. Yeah, so there was that opportunity now to test that guidance in Sierra Leone and Liberia, because at that point there were two processes that were going in that country. They were reviewing their thematic programs, so around governance, and they were also, we were at that point trying to strengthen our work around advocacy. So how do we strengthen that work? So it was easier then to kind of like hook myself into that at that point to go in and test it. Yeah, and so I had a kind of a dual process of doing this. We had a consultant that came into in there to kind of go in and do the political economy analysis. So this is like a technical person, a local person out there, but with a scope of work on trying to do this. But also from me, I then wanted to take the partners and the staff to first of all go through the frameworks and the concepts of thinking and working politically. And the reason why I did this dual approach was so that by the time the consultant came in to kind of submit their submissions and findings, then the partners and the staff were in a position to be able to engage in a meaningful conversation with the consultant. So this is how we did it. So I didn't just want to have a report that would just come from the consultant and have it, because I just felt like we would lose the internal knowledge management of it, because sometimes with the consultant, then they go, yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that it was kind of like a job process. This is
That's
not
right.
like we do like that all the time, but for this one, I wanted to make sure, because I was at that trimester stages of trying to say change the mindset of our partners and our staff, to kind of drive them towards underpinning their work with political economy analysis, or context analysis, as I wanted to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So it was important to actually incorporate the staff, not just the consultant, but have the staff
yes,
involved so that they
exactly,
actually
exactly.
own some of this as
And
well.
actually, yeah, if I can go to that point, it was very helpful, because then they after the training, because the consultant, poor man, came after we had taken them through all of these concepts, and so they were asking some of those really critical questions to the consultant. Yeah, so it was almost like I'd set up the consultant to fail, really, but it wasn't like that. But he appreciated it, because it was really helping, because these are people embedded in the context. So if you raise something, then they were able
Yeah.
to kind of like challenge it, and challenge it more, and say, why did you say that? How did you come to that? So I found it very
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah, but going back to the language, I think the language was the language that we use in these concepts really alienates sometimes people. So I had to come in. I mean, I remember one of the one of the examples that we used there. I mean, calling a chief an institution. They're like, what? Because this is informal institution. Like we're doing this
That's right.
work around, yeah, calibrating the institutions, and they were like, that's derogatory. How can you call
Yeah.
a chief an institution? You see, so it was really kind of trying to help them to understand that this is how the concepts are. This is just helping you to be able to understand that they have rules, they have regulations, they have their own incentives that they drive. So it was really a process of making sure that people understand these concepts. And I also had to go back and say, yeah, I mean, a while of just trying to do the concepts, I could see I was on my own. So I had to go back and look at
Mm.
what are the things that could help people understand. So I did come up with my own little case study that I came up with during the break. And why did Ibrahim die? So Ibrahim is a local name they use there, and I kind of like tried to have this little story, yeah, which just showed, yeah, this little family in one of the Freetown very slum areas, and what they would yeah, how they would go through their life until this little girl is dead, and this little boy is dead, and all that. I was trying then to make sure that I'm infusing the various, whether it's formal institutions, whether it's informal, and some of the incentives, some of the kind of the cultural issues around it, like some of the things that the mother would not want to take the child to the hospital because in the hospital there was no medication, or because the grandmother had told them that they could heal this child at home, or because they didn't have money, because the husband had been laid off. So I made it something very, very, very kind of embedded in the things that they'll deal with. And that actually helped to now understand, to say, oh, okay, that's what you mean when you say
Yeah.
this is a formal institution. Oh, that's what you mean when you say this is an incentive. So that really that really helped, and I did learn a bit from them as well when they were doing this, because I remember one of the very exciting examples was when they were actually writing out some of the actors, and somebody said, "Oh, the MP's wife," and I'm like, "What?" He says, "Yeah, because the understanding was that she's quite an important actor in the sense that she wants to continue to be the MP's wife. So she will push for certain reforms so that she can
Yeah.
continue to have that respect in the community because she's the MP's wife. So even if the MP would not want to push certain or drive certain things, she would push the husband to drive her. And that was quite like fascinating to hear that, something that maybe you would never read in a book. So I think in
Yeah.
engaging, once you get them to really understand, then the concepts, then everything else will just come on. But I think there's a lot of time you need to take trying to kind of unpack some of that those terminologies, give examples that are locally understood, ask them to give their own examples, and vary, why how you do this, put people into groups. One of the things that I noticed, Alina, was when you put them in the groups, especially about, okay, the actors, people who write the formal ministries, uh, you know, like Ministry of Agriculture. I
Mm.
remember when one of the women from the cassava partners that we work with,
Yeah. Yeah.
Ministry of Agriculture, and you're like, it's a big ministry. Who exactly in that ministry? Okay, and yeah, would you really want to influence? And so it kind of takes quite some. It's exciting, but it needs a lot of experience. And so one of the things is that you really need to be able to facilitate as well, so that you can be able to get that information out.
Yeah.
And I think this was your example from one of the articles that you wrote, which I used a lot, which was the analogy of the iceberg. Very important, that
Oh
like,
yeah.
what you see on the top of the iceberg is that the minister has been appointed, but what you don't see, which is
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
the underneath that iceberg, is that this is
Yeah.
patronage. This is a friend of the minister. So that's why they've been appointed. So
Yeah.
if you have any policy that you don't think was going to change, it's not even this minister that's blocking it, is actually the person that appointed them. So those kind of examples were really helpful for people to start to flesh out. And so, and obviously in Liberia and Sierra Leone, using that example for people that actually stay half the time exposed to the sea was quite useful. Was very useful, and so it's a very good analogy
Yeah.
that I think we in PA, it's a good start when you start to show people that, yeah, what
Yeah.
is at the surface is much more than you see. So I use that and turned up the example and say, yeah, so you see the MP, and you just don't realize underneath that there's the wife who actually would need this. So maybe when you are just doing your analysis, you just work with the MP and you forget all those people.
No, and I think you're saying a lot of really important things. I mean, I think this the need to really focus on what the substance of analysis is, rather than getting fixated in specific terms or frameworks, is really important, because the framework is there to act as a compass and to guide, but really the substance and how you make that substance accessible to people in their own terms, I think, is really important. And that's why I thought the kind of work you've been doing with your guidance is so fascinating, really, and so spot on. So that's really good. And I also think what you're saying about the need to involve people who will have a stake in terms of translating the insights from the political economy analysis into something concrete that affects what the program might look like is really also very important. And I think these resonate across different experiences as well. So perhaps maybe I can ask something related to that. I mean, having done your guidance, and I hope this was not a one woman sort of fight all alone in CAFOD. I hope you had partners in crime as well. But having spent the time to do the guidance and investing time also to work closely with people to socialize and embed this within CAFOD, have you seen sort of examples of how this guidance is being used and applied in different settings to actually inform programs, and
Thank
what
you,
difference
Alina.
has that made?
Yeah, so while this was just a trial in Sierra Leone of testing this guidance and things, I think that has really moved a lot. Maybe one point I should make on that is that the buy-in from various levels. So the buy-in of the partners and the staff, complemented by the buy-in from the senior leadership, really supports some of this work. And this is why
Mm,
we can actually start to see some of these very good examples of where this is now starting to work. So we are in the process at the moment of developing our new 10-year strategy for CAFOD. And that guidance has been very useful to guide some of that work. And what has happened is that right as we are starting to do this work, we have built in this idea of the context analysis. We are calling it different names, sometimes situational analysis, but it's the same. It's about thinking about the power, thinking about the politics, thinking about all the incentives, or what drives change and what doesn't drive change or block it. And so what I've seen is that based on that context analysis and the concepts and how to do it in the guidance, we have developed really, really very strong theories of change for the various countries that we are developing these strategies for.
mm.
And I'm sure I'll be back on this platform in a few years time to come and tell you exactly how that has been, how that has been helpful. But what it has done at the moment is amazing. You can start to see these very strong theories of change. You can start to see very strong management and program approaches that are actually coming in through these dialogues and valuable insights and strategies. And you can see actually some of the assumptions really being tested in that development of the theories of change. And so it's fascinating to actually see that the whole country strategy is based on thinking and working politically, and people will go and only try and do what they think will drive the change, and not just do anyhow anything. So I am, it's quite exciting. And actually, as they say, the product is as good as the process. So I think this process has really anchored that work, and
Yes.
is quite a linchpin. And I can't wait to see eventually when we start developing the actual projects, and in the countries, how much this will we will look back and say it's good that we anchored this in PEA.
Yeah. And you may have to be careful what you wish for, because it may not be years before we ask you back on the platform. So be careful. But that sounds very exciting, and we look forward to sort of learning more about how this work evolves. Perhaps as way of concluding, could I ask you, reflecting back on your experience and your TWP journey, and I think you're right that this is not about the destination, right? It's about the process. Um, what words of wisdom would you give those who are experimenting with TWP, as they continue with their own journey? Is there one thing that you would recommend or suggest, be it something that to read or something to learn more about
Yeah,
or
so words
try?
of
What would
wisdom.
it
In my
be?
culture, you need to have gray hair to give any words of freedom. Yeah. So, Alina, I wish it was like, the transport for London strapline. It says, "See it, say it, sorted." It's not like that. It's not like
Yes, it
that. It's more
does.
like see it, say it, and sort it. So, so this is not to scare budding PA or thinking and working politically people, if I may call them. But it's to say, yeah, you need to invest in it, but the benefits outweigh the heavy lifting that you do. Yeah, yeah, take some small steps, take some small bites, and yeah, and just just start to do it, and you see that it's not as threatening as it looks sometimes from the outside. And like we said, even all those things about the concepts and them, as soon as you grasp them and try and explain them in your context, it all works for the good. So adapt that language, break down the concepts, break down the definitions. Yeah, do the trade-offs of whether yeah, what are you going to do? Are you going to use a consultant, and are you going to use your own staff? Are you going to use both? Yeah, think about those. And yeah, and also the buy-in, like I said, you really need to think about yeah, to think about it. And like I said, there's so much useful information out there. The TWP community of practice, I think, is the WhatsApp section. And so if you go to that section, the WhatsApp section, you just get so many things that you can have. You see the podcasts are coming out. And there are other people as well. I mean, there's the USAD. I think they've also their own section where they tell you what they are reading. Yeah, so there is spaces to go, and the communities of practice are really useful places to go. Go to the soapbox and talk to Graham Teskey. Yeah, you find information there. So yeah, so there is, and all I'm thinking about now is I hope people like you, Alina, will now kind of like build this critical mass of people. So that we can all start working on this, and all start helping each other in all ways possible, and take this forward. And yeah, so let's work together on this journey, and you're not alone. Maybe that's the message that I'm saying. There are always people to go with, and if you work with others, you go far.
Yeah. Oh, that's a wonderful thing to say. And we're so happy that the TWP COP can be part of that journey. And we are so very happy that we found you in one of our travels. So that's really exciting. Now you're part of the, you're part of us. So yes, it will not be too long before we have you in another kind of platform, I am sure. But so thank you so much, Daddy, right? That was absolutely wonderful.
Thank
And
you. Thank you very
safe
much,
travels and
Hamina.
ongoing journey. Thank you.